every single morning, before wars are planned, before markets open, before children leave for school, before the world truly wakes. Billions of people perform the exact same ritual. They heat water, they wait, and they place a handful of dried leaves into a cup. This ritual happens in mountain villages hidden above the clouds. It happens inside crowded cities of steel and glass. It happens in quiet monasteries, in desert tents, in royal palaces, and inside tiny kitchens where no history books will ever remember the people who lived there. Different languages, different gods, different empires, yet somehow the same leaves. But here's the mystery. Earth is home to more than 300,000 known species of plants. Thousands are edible. Hundreds can be brewed. So why, out of all the leaves humanity could have chosen, did civilization keep returning to just one? The answer wasn't discovered by scientists. It wasn't invented by chefs. It wasn't designed by kings. According to one of the oldest legends in East Asia, it began because a single leaf fell into a pot of boiling water. No one knows exactly how tea was discovered. History is silent. So legend stepped in to answer the question. Nearly 5,000 years ago, ancient China told the story of an emperor unlike any other. He wasn't remembered for conquering kingdoms. He wasn't remembered for building monuments. He was remembered for tasting the world. His name was Shennong, the divine farmer. Ancient stories say he believed every plant carried a secret. Some could heal, some could nourish, others could kill. Instead of fearing them, he chose to taste them himself. The legends became even more extraordinary. They claimed Shennong tested hundreds of unknown plants on his own body, sometimes dozens in a single day. Many made him violently ill. Others nearly stopped his heart. Every painful lesson became knowledge, passed to future generations. One afternoon, after another exhausting journey, Shennong stopped beneath the shade of a wild tree. As always, his servants boiled water before he drank. Then, the wind changed. A single leaf landed inside the boiling water. Almost instantly, the clear water transformed, pale gold, fragrant, unlike anything anyone had smelled before. Curious, Shennong took a sip. Legend says the bitterness awakened his mind, cleared the poisons from his body, and revealed a plant the world would never forget. But discovering tea was only the beginning. The real question was, how did one mountain plant escape its forest and slowly persuade nearly every civilization on Earth to make it part of daily life? Whether Shennong truly existed, we may never know. Legends rarely leave behind evidence, but tea did. Long before it became a global drink, it grew quietly across the mist-covered mountains of southwestern China, hidden among forests, waiting for someone to understand its gift. At first, people didn't drink tea because it tasted good. They drank it because they believed it could heal. The leaves were boiled like medicine, prescribed for digestion, for fatigue, for fevers, for long journeys through unforgiving mountains. Tea wasn't comfort. It was survival. Something unexpected happened. The medicine people needed became the drink they wanted. Families gathered around it. Travelers carried it. Farmers shared it after long days in the fields. Slowly, without kings ordering it, without armies spreading it, tea entered everyday life. Then, tea found the people who would transform it forever. Not merchants, not emperors, monks. They discovered that a simple bowl of tea could keep the mind awake through hours of silent meditation and from the quiet halls of remote monasteries. Tea began its journey beyond the mountains. Tea did not conquer the world through force. It spread one cup, one traveler, one monastery, at a time. But the greatest journey of this humble leaf was only beginning. In the centuries that followed, tea would stop being medicine. It would become philosophy. It would become art. And before long, entire empires would be willing to kill for it. For centuries, tea remained a quiet companion, gathered by farmers, brewed by healers, shared among families. But around the 8th century, something remarkable happened. China stopped treating tea as medicine and began treating it as culture. Tea had one advantage few drinks possessed. It could travel. Fresh leaves spoiled quickly, so people steamed them, compressed them into solid cakes, and carried them across mountains, rivers, and deserts. Every caravan carried more than tea. It carried ideas. Then, one man asked a question no one had asked before. If tea had become part of everyday life, could it also become an art? His name was Lu Yu. History remembers him simply as the Sage of Tea. Around the year 760, Lu Yu finished a book unlike anything the world had seen. It wasn't simply about making tea. It explored where tea should grow, which water should be used, which cups mattered, even the state of mind required before taking the first sip. It was called The Classic of Tea, the world's first known book devoted entirely to tea. Tea was no longer just something people drank. It had become something people studied. But the monks who carried this book across the sea were about to give tea an entirely new purpose. Empires often spread through conquest. Religions spread through faith. Tea spread through curiosity. During the Tang Dynasty, Buddhist monks traveled between China and Japan in search of sacred teachings. They returned carrying more than scriptures. Hidden among their belongings were tiny tea seeds. Crossing the East China Sea was never easy. Storms swallowed ships. Winds changed without warning. Many travelers never returned. Yet every successful voyage carried something impossible to measure. Not gold, not silk, but ideas. Inside Japan's monasteries, tea found a new purpose. Meditation could last for hours, sometimes through the entire night. Fatigue was the enemy. Tea became the silent companion of every monk. One bowl helped keep the mind awake and the spirit focused. Somewhere along the way, the drink itself stopped being the point. Preparing tea became an act of mindfulness. Serving tea became an act of respect. Drinking tea became a reminder that every moment, however ordinary, would never exist again. Tea had become philosophy. In China, tea had become culture. In Japan, it became a philosophy. But beyond the seas, another civilization had never even tasted it. Within a few centuries, Europe would discover tea. And that discovery would reshape the global economy forever. While tea was becoming part of everyday life in the East, Europe barely knew it existed. Kings competed for gold. Merchants searched for spices. Explorers mapped unfamiliar oceans. Entire empires raced toward Asia. Without realizing, the greatest treasure they would eventually bring home was a leaf. The first Europeans to encounter tea weren't kings. They were merchants. Portuguese traders reached China in the 16th century. Dutch merchants followed soon after. They discovered a drink unlike anything Europe had ever tasted. Light, fragrant, delicate. It was nothing like beer, nothing like wine, nothing like coffee. Tea crossed oceans in tiny quantities. Every voyage was long, dangerous, expensive. By the time it reached Europe, tea wasn't an everyday drink. It was a luxury, reserved for aristocrats, wealthy merchants, and royal courts. A single chest could be worth a small fortune. But among all the nations that discovered tea, one would become completely obsessed. Not China, where tea was born. Not Japan, where tea became philosophy. Britain. Within a few generations, an island thousands of miles away, would build its economy, reshape its empire, and eventually wage wars to satisfy its growing thirst. History often tells us that empires shape the world, but sometimes an empire is shaped by something far smaller. A drink, a habit, a single leaf. In the next chapter, tea will stop being a luxury and become the fuel of the British Empire. Britain's love affair with tea wasn't inevitable. It began with one royal wedding, one Portuguese princess, and a habit that would quietly transform an entire nation. It's almost impossible to imagine Britain without tea. Afternoon tea, tea breaks, a kettle in every home. Fancy a cup? Today, tea feels inseparable from British identity. But for most of its history, Britain had never tasted it. Tea wasn't British. It was foreign, mysterious, and unimaginably expensive. Then, in 1662, a royal marriage quietly changed history. Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess, arrived in England to marry King Charles II. She brought jewels, fine furniture, exotic luxuries. But among her belongings was something far more influential. Tea. At first, tea wasn't for everyone. It became the drink of queens, duchesses, aristocrats. If the royal court embraced tea, society followed. Soon, drinking tea became more than refreshment. It became status. Demand exploded. Every year, Britain wanted more tea. More ships crossed the oceans. More merchants sailed to China. But there was one problem. China had plenty of tea. Britain had almost nothing China wanted in return. Silver flowed east and never seemed to come back. Britain had discovered a drink it couldn't live without. But addiction has a price, and when Britain ran out of silver, it searched for something else to pay with. That decision would trigger one of the darkest chapters in the history of tea. By the late 18th century, Britain had a problem no empire wanted to admit. Every chest of tea leaving China had to be paid for. The Chinese Empire accepted silver, very little else. Year after year, British ships sailed east carrying silver and returned carrying tea. The tea kept Britain satisfied, but the silver kept disappearing. Then someone noticed something. Britain controlled vast lands in India. Those lands could produce something China desperately tried to keep out: opium. At first, the trade was small, quiet, almost invisible. But profits have a way of growing faster than principles. The silver began flowing back. But something else flowed into China: addiction. What had started as smuggling spread through ports, cities, and villages. Officials watched with growing alarm. Families lost fortunes. Soldiers lost discipline. The empire realized tea was no longer the most dangerous cargo crossing its borders. In 1839, the Qing court decided enough was enough. An imperial commissioner named Lin Zexu received a simple order: end the opium trade, no matter the cost. He confiscated more than 20,000 chests of opium. Then, in full public view, he ordered them destroyed. To China, it was an act of sovereignty. To Britain, it was an attack on commerce. Neither side believed they were starting a war. One empire thought it was defending its laws. The other believed it was defending free trade. Between them stood a single commodity that had begun as nothing more than a humble leaf. The First Opium War was about to begin, and tea was still at the center of the story. History remembers it as the Opium War. But names can be misleading. Britain didn't cross half the world. simply to sell opium. Opium was the key. Tea was the lock. Without Britain's growing addiction to tea, there would have been no desperate search for another currency, and perhaps no war at all. The conflict lasted less than 3 years. It exposed a painful reality. The Qing Empire, one of the richest civilizations on Earth, was no longer the strongest. Steam-powered gunboats, modern artillery, industrial manufacturing had changed warfare forever. China was fighting the 19th century with the tools of the 18th. In 1842, the war ended. China signed the Treaty of Nanjing. It ceded Hong Kong, opened treaty ports, paid enormous reparations, and accepted a new reality. The balance of global power had shifted, a chain of events quietly set in motion by humanity's thirst for tea. A leaf never wanted an empire. It never demanded wealth. It never asked for war. It simply grew, quietly, on mist-covered mountains. Yet people crossed oceans for it, built fortunes around it, smuggled for it, killed for it, changed history because of it. Perhaps the most powerful things in history are not the things that seek power, but the things we cannot imagine living without. By the middle of the 19th century, tea was no longer China's secret, or Japan's philosophy, or Britain's luxury. It had become the world's habit. But one question remained. If China created tea, why is India now one of the largest tea producers on Earth? That answer begins with one act of industrial espionage, and one man willing to steal an empire's greatest secret. Imagine trying to steal an empire's greatest secret. Not a weapon, not a map, not a vault filled with gold, a plant, along with the knowledge of how to grow it, harvest it, and transform its leaves into the drink the world had become addicted to. It sounds impossible, but in the 19th century, Britain decided to try. Even after the Opium War, Britain still depended on China for tea. Every harvest, every shipment, every cup began in Chinese mountains. For an empire that controlled oceans, that dependence felt dangerous. Britain wanted something greater than access. It wanted independence. His name was Robert Fortune, a Scottish botanist. Patient, curious, quiet. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a diplomat. Yet he would carry out one of the boldest intelligence missions of the Victorian era. His target, China's tea industry. At the time, foreigners were forbidden from entering many parts of inland China, especially the remote mountain regions, where the finest tea was grown. But Fortune had a plan. He would travel disguised as a Chinese merchant, walk into the heart of the tea country, and learn everything. If Fortune failed, he could lose everything. If he succeeded, he wouldn't just steal a plant. He would steal centuries of knowledge, and with it, the future of the global tea trade. Fortune quickly discovered something unexpected. Tea wasn't China's greatest secret. The secret was knowing what to do with the leaves. Two plants could look identical, yet one would become delicate green tea, another rich black tea, and another fragrant oolong. The difference wasn't the tree, it was the hands. Every village taught him something new. Which leaves were picked first? Which seasons produced the finest harvest? How long the leaves rested? How hot the pans became? How moisture changed everything? Fortune wrote it all down. Quietly, patiently, page after page. But collecting knowledge wasn't enough. Living tea plants had to survive a journey of thousands of miles across the sea. For decades, that had seemed impossible. Then came an invention that changed everything. The Wardian case. a simple glass box. That created its own tiny ecosystem. For the first time, plants could cross oceans alive. By the time Fortune returned, he carried thousands of tea plants, countless seeds, detailed notes, and something even more valuable: experience. Britain's mission had succeeded. The empire no longer needed to depend entirely on China. It was about to build its own tea kingdom. In India, Britain had stolen more than a crop. It had transplanted an industry. Within a generation, hillsides that had never grown tea would be covered with it, and millions of cups around the world would never again come from China. Stealing tea was one thing. Keeping it alive was another. The young plants had survived the voyage, but no one knew whether they could survive India. Different soil, different rain, different insects, different seasons. An empire had gambled on a leaf. Against all expectations, the experiment worked. The cool Himalayan slopes of Darjeeling produced delicate aromatic teas. Far to the east, Assam revealed something even more surprising. Wild tea plants had already been growing there for centuries. Britain hadn't just found new land, it had found another home for tea. For thousands of years, tea had been crafted by hand. Now, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Steam engines powered factories, railways connected plantations to ports, faster ships crossed the oceans. Tea was no longer rare. It became scalable, predictable, global. As production increased, prices began to fall. For the first time in history, tea escaped the palaces. It entered factories, farmhouses, small kitchens, lunch breaks, family tables. The drink once reserved for emperors had become part of ordinary life. And perhaps that was its greatest victory. It began as a wild plant, hidden in the mountains of China. It became a medicine, a philosophy, a luxury, a reason for exploration, a cause of economic crisis, a catalyst for war, a target of espionage, and finally, a habit shared by billions. But one mystery still remains. If tea conquered the world, why did every civilization make it differently? Imagine serving tea to someone from every corner of the world. One bowl would be bright green, another would be almost black. One would taste smoky, another floral. One would be mixed with butter, another with mint, another with milk and spices. They all look different. They all taste different. Yet they all begin with the same plant. In Japan, tea became an exercise in presence. Every movement mattered. Every pause had meaning. The bowl, the whisk, the silence between each breath. Here, tea wasn't consumed quickly. It was experienced. In India, tea took a completely different path. It met cardamom, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, black pepper, milk, sugar. Every household developed its own recipe. Tea became conversation, hospitality, family. In Morocco, tea became a welcome. Refusing a cup could seem impolite. Preparing it was a performance. Pouring from high above the glass created a delicate foam, a sign of care, a sign of generosity. Here, tea wasn't just shared. It was offered as friendship. In Britain, tea became routine. 4 o'clock, the kettle whistles. Milk, porcelain, conversation. For millions, the day simply doesn't feel complete until the tea is poured. The leaf that once belonged to distant mountains had become part of everyday life, half a world away. One leaf, countless traditions. Every civilization believed it had made tea its own. But perhaps Tea had been quietly shaping every civilization instead. We began this journey with a simple question. Why does nearly every civilization eventually drink tea? The answer isn't because tea tastes the best. It isn't because tea grows everywhere. And it certainly isn't because every culture learned about it at the same time. The answer lies somewhere deeper, in what it means to be human. Every civilization faced the same challenges: long winters, exhausting work, endless conversations, quiet moments of grief, celebrations, reflection. Tea asked for very little: clean water, fire, time. And in return, it offered warmth, wakefulness, comfort, and a reason to gather. Perhaps tea never conquered the world. Perhaps humanity kept rediscovering the same idea: to pause, to share, to listen, to think. Every civilization wrapped that idea in its own language, its own customs, its own traditions. But beneath them all, the ritual remained remarkably familiar. So, why does every civilization eventually drink tea? Not because every civilization copied China, not because empires forced it upon the world, not because it was the only leaf worth drinking, but because sooner or later, every civilization discovers the value of slowing down, of gathering together, of sharing stories, of finding warmth in an uncertain world. Tea became the cup. Humanity filled it with meaning. And perhaps that is why one ordinary leaf became extraordinary tomorrow morning. When the kettle begins to boil and the steam rises once again, you may not just see a cup of tea. You may see mountains, monks, merchants, sailors, empires, families, and thousands of years of human history waiting quietly inside a single leaf.